Good evening and welcome to another Omega Insight. Tonight's topic is the second mile. Now, for many, this concept is not new. In the educational system, we were offered extra credit. On our final exams, there usually were bonus questions. And these were tools to help a student excel. Sometimes it made them get to a passing grade, sometimes it bumped a B to an A, and sometimes it went from an A to an A plus. That would be considered a second mile. That's really as simple as I can get. The difference between a second mile is an A and an A plus. A plus is the one who went the extra effort. The question is, why would you go the extra effort? Now, in the classroom, we talk about how the second mile, in the first mile we live, but the first mile we exist, and that's in the second mile that we live, which I'll come back to in a moment. So, of course, if we think about the work environment, second miles entails the striving for the raises. And back in the day, it used to be you got a raise if you were the one who went above and beyond, gave the reports before the boss asked. Today they call it a proactive employee, that you're giving what's required because you can foresee, and you go above and beyond your job just to be able to assist. And, unfortunately, sometimes this turns into brown nosing, and the person who gets the raises and the promotions are the one who can bedazzle the best. It's the individual who can get that unattainable tee time on the golf course for the boss. They sometimes are the one who gets the raises or gets promoted. Sometimes it's the one with the connections, takes them to the baseball games and whatnot. I understand that, and it seems like that has been the driving force for second mile, and therefore the definition has been muddy on why would you go a second mile, and unless you're a brown noser. In the classroom, we present this idea, and that idea that the second mile, as I said, it's where people live their life, and it's not merely existing, we're living. It requires a little bit more effort, and the concept is, when we go that extra mile, we're doing it for the other individual. Let's say, if you're painting a room, and the first thing you do is you tape off everything. So you tape off the light switches. Well, there are some people who put the blue tape around the light switch. That'll work. Then there's some people who actually put tape across the entire light switch. Again, that will work. But the second mile people are the ones who take the light switch off. It makes it a lot easier for whoever's painting. Again, it's just a little extra time, but it makes the process go easier. That would be considered a second mile individual. Someone who can foresee, it makes it easier to paint if I remove the light switch. Now, I'm trying to be as practical as I can when it comes to the second mile. It's the idea of giving more than what's required. And why would we give more than what's required? Well, the immediate reward isn't often seen. When we give more than what's required, it's like an investment. I can only think about, raising our children. We give more than what's required. Sometimes if we give excessive, then it turns extra. So I'm not talking about that. I'm thinking about giving more, like listening more than what's required, perhaps, maybe. And required isn't the right word. And maybe I shouldn't use our children here. I'm thinking more about your own spiritual path is to give more than what's required. Even development of willpower is to give more than what's required. There's a willpower exercise that says when you're tired, get up and go out and go for a walk before you rest, just to, teach yourself that you can give more than stopping right at where you are. Again, going back to the idea of a second mile for spirituality, how do I do it for my spirit? And that's what I really think it is. It's more connected to our soul. Second mile. Logically, it doesn't make sense. Why should I go and give extra work if I'm not getting paid for it? George used to say, if you're the individual and you understood second mile, you work the extra hours, and when times are tough, you let your boss know, hey, you don't have to pay me overtime. I'm going to be here to help. Because usually when it comes push to shove and they have to start getting rid of people, it's the second mile people they keep until the very end, because they know those are the ones who are dependable and looking out for the business, not just themselves. There's a gentleman named Dawson Trotman who used to talk about this. He had the second mile spirit. Sometimes he would often kneel and pray for hours at a time. And he'd stay in the same spot no matter what. He'd like to do this outside. And sometimes he would kneel and there'd be a pebble under his knee and he wouldn't move. And he used this, he endured the pain as a spiritual practice. Now, most of us are like, just scooch it out of the way. But his idea was, I knelt and that was there, so I will endure it. And that's like the second mile for him, is to go above and beyond than what was called for. On the spiritual path, many of our eyes are fixed out on the horizon. And few maintain the discipline that's required to reach the horizon. Like, we all know how to meditate, and when we don't see immediate results, we stop, or we move to a different discipline. So we can sit and meditate, and after a week of meditating and I don't feel calm, well, that's it, I have to try something else. And then I go to mantras, or I go to yoga, or practice deep breathing, or I go for brisk walks, because we're looking for the constant gratification, the instant gratification. With second mile, there is no instant gratification. As I said, it's planting the seeds. If you believe in karma, which I do, who knows? Maybe the second mile is investment in the bank for the next life. I don't know. I might be living off my bank from the last time I lived, if that's true, in the karma that I did for second mile. So when we are practicing the second mile, it also means memorizing doctrine isn't really second mile. It's putting it into practice. That's the second mile. I can quote things, well, I'm not that good at it, but I can quote things left and right, and if I'm not applying it in my life, that's not second mile. It's shallow. And you know what that's like, to follow a teacher and they're not doing the things that they're practicing. That ends up coming across shallow, and it's all about the ego rather than the spirit. And again, in the second mile, there is no room for ego. It really is for the spirit. So what does it mean to have a second mile spirit then? This means to be available. It means to, again, sacrifice your ego, to serve without expectations, to never reach the thought that you have arrived, because there is no arrival. We just keep going and learning and expanding. It means to be free from all judgment, to accept everyone, and it means to have unconditional love. That's the second mile. In order to reach unconditional love, remember the definition that we use. Love the unlovable, give to the undeserving, and forgive the unforgivable. All of that requires second mile work. So in conclusion, the idea is the second mile is not an easy path. It's really not for everyone. But if you are a serious student, if you seriously want to take this work to heart, then you will look for ways to go the second mile, to go above and beyond what is called for in you, and begin to develop the taste for it. And you'll be able to see areas that you can implement that in your life. I believe the second mile individual experiences a more spiritual path, a more peaceful path, as long as there's no attachment to it. Again, not like I did all of this for you and you're not acknowledging me. That's not the second mile. The second mile is going above and beyond what's called for without expectation and attachment. And if it's not appreciated, you did it for your own doing. That's pretty much what I can say about the second mile. It's a really in-depth philosophical subject, and I wanted to introduce that to you now as we are continuing on doing our work here. So thank you for joining me this evening as we talk about the second mile. And I hope that you begin to practice and see what it feels like to be a second mile individual. As always, thank you for keeping the spirit of Omega alive. And a reminder that Omega 1 is April 29th through May 1st. So go ahead and register right off the website. You can register right from there. Until next we speak, have a wonderful evening. Bye now.